The Knights of the Cross by Henryk Sienkiewicz. Don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date. Chapter 15. The next day did not avoid Zbyszko at all, and he did not prevent him from performing for Danusia during the journey those different services which, being her knight, he was obliged to render her. On the contrary, Zbyszko noticed that the gloomy Pan of Spykow looked at him kindly, as if he were regretting that he had been obliged to refuse his request. The young Lodika tried several times to have some conversation with him. After they started from Krakow, there were plenty of opportunities during the journey, because both accompanied the princess on horseback. But as soon as Zbyszko endeavored to learn something about the secret difficulties separating him from Danusia, the conversation was suddenly ended. Juran's face became gloomy, and he looked at Zbyszko uneasily, as if he were afraid he would betray himself. Zbyszko thought that perhaps the princess knew what the obstacle was, so having an opportunity to speak to her privately, he inquired, but she could not tell him anything. "Certainly there is some secret," she said. "Juran himself told me that, but he begged me not to question him further, because he not only did not wish to tell what it was, but he could not. Surely he must be bound by some oath, as so often happens among the knights. But God will help us, and everything will turn out well." "Without Danusia, I will be as unhappy as a chained dog or a bear in a ditch," answered Zbyszko. "There will be neither joy nor pleasure, nothing but sorrow and sighing. I will go against the Tartars with Prince Witold, and may they kill me there. But first I must accompany Uncle to Bogdaniec, and then tear from German heads the peacock's tufts as I promised. Perhaps the Germans will kill me, and I prefer such a death rather than to live and see someone else take Danusia." The princess looked at him with her kind blue eyes and asked him with a certain degree of astonishment, "Then you would permit it?" "I? As long as I have breath in my nostrils, it will not happen unless my hand be paralyzed and I be unable to hold my axe." "Then you see! Bah! But how can I take her against her father's will?" To this the princess said, as to herself, "Does it not happen that way sometimes?" Then to Zbyszko, "God's will is stronger than a father's will. What did Juran say to you?" "He said to me, if it be God's will, then he will get her." "He said the same to me," exclaimed Zbyszko. "Do you not see? It is my only consolation, gracious lady. I will help you, and you can be sure of Danusia's constancy. Only yesterday I said to her, 'Danusia, will you always love Zbyszko?' And she answered, 'I will be Zbyszko's and no one else's.' She is still a green berry, but when she promises anything she keeps her word because she is the daughter of a knight. Her mother was like her." "Thank God," said Zbyszko. "Only remember to be faithful to her also. Man is inconstant. He promises to love one faithfully, and afterward he promises another." "May Lord Jesus punish me if I prove such," exclaimed Zbyszko energetically. "Well, remember then, and after you have conveyed your uncle to Bogdaniec, come to our court. There will be some opportunity then for you to win your spurs. Then we will see what can be done. In the meanwhile, Danusia will mature, and she will feel God's will. Although she loves you very much even now, it is not the same love a woman feels. Perhaps Juran will give his consent, because I see he likes you. You can go to Spykow, and from there can go with Juran against the Germans. It may happen that you will render him some great service and thus gain his affection. Gracious princess, I have thought the same, but with your sanction it will be easier." This conversation cheered Zbyszko. Meanwhile, at the first baiting place, old Mako became worse, and it was necessary to remain until he became better. The good princess, Anna Danuta, left him all the medicine she had with her, but she was obliged to continue her journey. Therefore both Lodikas of Bogdaniec bid those belonging to the Mazovian court farewell. Zbyszko prostrated himself at the princess' feet, then at Danusia's. He promised her once more to be faithful and to meet her soon at Ciechanów or at Warszawa. Finally he seized her in his strong arms, and having lifted her, he repeated with a voice full of emotion, "Remember me, my sweetest flower. Remember me, my little golden fish." Danusia embraced him as though he were a beloved brother, put her little cheek to his face, and wept copiously. "I do not want to go to Ciechanów without Zbyszko. I do not want to go to Ciechanów." Juran saw her grief, but he was not angry. On the contrary, he bid the young man goodbye kindly. and after he had mounted, he turned toward him once more and said, "God be with you. Do not bear ill will toward me." "How can I feel ill will toward you? You are Danusia's father," answered Zbyszko cordially. Then he bent to his stirrup, and the old man shook hands with him and said, "May God help you in everything. Understand?" Then he rode away. But Zbyszko understood that in his last words he wished him success, and when he went back to the wagon on which Mako was lying, he said, "Do you know I believe he is willing, but something hinders him from giving his consent. You are in Spykow and you have good common sense. Try to guess what it is." But Mako was too ill. The fever increased so much toward evening that he became delirious. Therefore, instead of answering Zbyszko, he looked at him as if he were astonished. Then he asked, "Why do they ring the bells?" Zbyszko was frightened. He feared that if the sick man heard the sound of bells, it was a sign that death would soon come. He feared also that the old man might die without a priest and without confession, and therefore go, if not to hell, then at least for long centuries to purgatory. Therefore, he determined to resume their journey in order to reach, as soon as possible, some parish in which Mako could receive the last sacraments. Consequently, they started and traveled during the night. Zbyszko sat in the wagon on the hay, beside the sick man, and watched him till daybreak. From time to time he gave him wine to drink. Mako drank it eagerly, because it relieved him greatly. After the second quart, he recovered from his delirium, and after the third, he fell asleep. He slept so well that Zbyszko bent toward him from time to ascertain if he was still alive. Until the time of his imprisonment in Krakow, he did not realize how dearly he loved this uncle who replaced for him father and mother. But now he realized it very well, and he felt that after his uncle's death, life would be very lonesome for him, alone, without relatives, except the abbot who held Bogdaniec in pledge, without friends and without anyone to help him. The thought came to him that if Mako died, it would be one more reason for vengeance on the Germans, by whose means he had nearly lost his head, by whom all his forefathers had been killed, also Danusia's mother and many other innocent people, whom he knew or about whom he had heard from his acquaintances, and he began to say to himself, "In this whole kingdom there is no man who has not suffered some wrong from them, and who would not like to avenge those wrongs." Here he remembered the Germans with whom he fought at Wilno, and he knew that even the Tartars were less cruel. The coming dawn interrupted his thoughts. The day was bright but cold. Evidently Mako felt better, because he was breathing more regularly and more quietly. He did not awaken until the sun was quite warm. Then he opened his eyes and said, "I am better. Where are we?" "We are approaching Olkusk, you know, where they dig silver. If one could get that which is in the earth, then one could rebuild Bogdaniec." "I see you are better," answered Zbyszko, laughing. "Hey, it would be enough even for a stone castle. We will go to the Fara, because there the priests will offer us hospitality, and you will be able to make your confession. Everything is in God's hands, but it is better to have one's conscience clear." "I am a sinner and will willingly repent," answered Mako. "I dreamed last night that the devils were taking my skin off. They were talking German. Thanks be to God that I am better. Have you slept any?" "How could I sleep when I was watching you?" "Then lie down for a while. When we arrive, I will awaken you." "I cannot sleep." "What prevents you?" Zbyszko looked at his uncle and said, "What else can it be, if not love? I have pain in my heart, but I will ride on horseback for a while. That will help me." He got down from the wagon and mounted the horse which his servant brought for him. Meanwhile, Mako touched his sore side. But he was evidently thinking about something else and not about his illness, because he tossed his head, smacked his lips, and finally said, "I wonder and wonder, and I cannot wonder enough, why you are so eager for love, because your father was not that way, and neither am I." But Zbyszko, instead of answering, stretched himself on the saddle, put his hands on his hips, gave his head a toss, and sang, "I cried the whole night, cried in the morning. Where have you been, my sweet girl, my darling? It will not help me if I mourn for thee, because I am quite sure you will not see me." "Hey!" This hey resounded in the forest, reverberated against the trunks of the trees, finally re-echoed in the far distance, and then was lost in the thickets. Again Mako felt his side, in which the German spearhead had lodged, and said, moaning a little, "Formerly the people were wiser." Then he became thoughtful, as if recollecting the old times, and he added, "Although even then some of them were stupid also." But in the meantime they emerged from the forest, behind which they perceived the miners' sheds and further walls built by King Kazimierz, and the tower of the Fara erected by Władysław Łokietek. The canon of the Fara beard Mako's confession and offered them hospitality. They remained there overnight and started the next morning. Beyond Olkusk, they turned toward Śląsk, and on its boundaries, they proposed to ride toward Wielkopolska. The road was laid out through a large forest, in which there was heard toward sunset the roaring of the urus and of the bison, and during the night the eyes of wolves were seen shining behind the thick hazelnut trees. But the greatest danger which threatened the traveler on this road was from the German and Germanized knights of Śląsk, whose castles were erected here and there near the boundaries. It is true that because of the war with the Opolczyk, Nader-Spraw, whom the Silesians were helping against King Ladislaw, the majority of these castles had been destroyed by Polish hands. It was necessary, however, to be watchful, and especially after sunset, and to have one's weapons ready. They were riding so quietly, however, that Zbyszko found the journey tedious. When they were about 1 day's journey from Bogdaniec, they heard the snorting and trampling of horses behind them. "Some people are following us," said Zbyszko. Mako, who was awake, looked at the stars and answered like an experienced traveler, "Daybreak is near. Robbers do not attack toward the end of the night." Zbyszko stopped the wagon, however, placed the men across the road facing the advancing horses, and waited. In fact, after a certain time he perceived in the dusk several horsemen. One of them was riding ahead, and it was evident that he did not wish to hide, because he was singing. Zbyszko could not hear the words of the song, but the gay "hock, hock" with which the stranger ended each refrain reached his ears. "Our people," he said to himself. After a while he shouted, however, "Stop! And you sit down," answered a joyous voice. "Who are you? And you, why do you follow us? And why do you obstruct the road? Answer, our crossbows are bent, and ours, thrust out, aimed. Answer like a man, otherwise woe to you." To this a merry song was given, as an answer to Zbyszko. One misery with another, they are dancing on the crossway. Hock, hock, hock. What use have they of dancing? It's a good thing anyhow. Hock, hock, hock.
Remember to subscribe.